firestorm pushes into the Northeast. Hundreds of thousands of homes without power for the fourth straight day in Texas. And now the scramble for clean water. 7 million residents ordered to boil their water before using it. Some resorting to melting snow. Hospitals running out of water, evacuating patients. I'll talk to the Houston mayor. The firestorm for Senator Ted Cruz after flying with his family to Cancun while people in his home state are freezing and without food and water. How he's defending himself. As the massive storm causes vaccination delays, growing fears over variants. Pfizer tonight on whether the mutations may require a third shot. And the staggering toll from COVID, the biggest drop in life expectancy since World War II. Dr. Anthony Fauci, one-on-one, what he said about whether teachers need to be vaccinated before schools reopen. The new federal investigation over COVID deaths in New York's nursing homes. And the fellow Democrat who says Governor Andrew Cuomo threatened him for speaking out. And touchdown on Mars after a 7-month journey, NASA's Perseverance mission, all coming down to a nail-biting 7 minutes.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening, everyone. From the deep freeze and days without power to now a water crisis. Millions of Texans tonight tired, cold, and increasingly desperate. Right now, much of the South under federal states of emergency following those crippling winter storms that overwhelmed Texas's power grid. 1 million or more people still in the dark, with millions more without drinkable water, melting snow for basic needs. We'll take you there in a moment. There's also news we'll get to about the vaccines and those dangerous new COVID strains. And later, talk about sticking a landing, the big deal that happened on Mars today, and the first photos. But let's start closer to home. Morgan Chesky with the unfolding disaster in Texas.
Tonight, a still frozen Texas facing power outages.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 20.
And now, a water crisis. Nearly 7 million statewide without access to clean drinking water. Tonight, the White House declaring a state of emergency for Texas, Oklahoma, and other affected states.
Texans deserve answers about why these shortfalls occurred and how they're going to be corrected, and Texans will get those answers.
For the first time since Monday, power outages dipped below 1 million homes, but with water lines frozen or busted, many growing desperate. Others lining up in sub-freezing temperatures, hoping for a chance at much-needed supplies.
I'm trying so hard not to cry.
For Glory Ramos, the food and water vital to help take care of her 3 kids.
I'm very stressed, too, with everything going on. It's hard, but I'm trying.
The situation right now is dire here.
Houston Fire Chief Samuel Pena says emergency calls have tripled. His crew's no longer fighting just fires, but low water pressure.
Water pressure was so low that we were unable to use the fire hydrants.
Patients at an Austin hospital evacuated overnight after it lost power and water. Online, help flooding in for those unaccustomed to sustained cold. Northerners sharing tips, like using melted snow to flush toilets.
You got more chicken coming?
And in Houston, Chef Chris Williams serving up some help with a smile, feeding thousands at a warming shelter, promising hot meals to those still suffering from the brutal cold.
It exposes how fortunate we are to live where we do, to have running water, electricity, and having that taken away from you, it's extreme.
And tonight, this string of winter storms causing serious concerns over our nation's blood supply. Many centers lost donations due to outages and weather conditions. Now, America's Blood Center and the Red Cross urging any healthy adult to please consider donating. Lester.
All right, Morgan, thank you. And minutes ago, I spoke to Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner about what lies ahead for people there. Well, Mayor Turner, thank you for being with us. I know the lights are coming on there, but at the same time, you're looking at another hard freeze overnight. Are there still folks in danger?
There are still folks in danger. There's still people without power. There are still people, for example, that just find themselves in a very precarious state, Lester. Things have changed quite a bit in the last 24 hours, but there are people, we're under a boil water notice right now. And for people who don't have power, that means they don't have the ability to boil their water. So they're having to rely on bottled water. And then there are a lot of people who simply can't afford to go into the stores. So we're trying to do mass distribution sites. But things are real tenuous for a lot of people in the city.
I know there's been a lot of concern regarding the hospitals. Are they getting the water they need?
The pressure for the hospitals has gone up. On yesterday, in terms of pressure, we were below what we call 20 PSI. As of a couple of hours ago, that pressure had increased to 29 and holding, and on its way to 35. So the water pressure in the hospitals has improved. The water pressure, for example, in our county jail has improved. And now we're just doing the best we can to increase the water pressure across the city, especially for people who are in homes and in hotels, things of that nature. But things are improving, but it's still going to take some time to get where it needs to be.
All right, Mayor. Well, yeah, folks in Texas, in all of our hearts tonight, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Les.
That massive power failure took officials in Texas by surprise and may be a wake-up call for other systems around the country amid the challenges of climate change. Here's Stephanie Gosk.
It's now expected to be the largest insurance claim event in Texas history, surpassing even Hurricane Harvey in 2017 and these wildfires in 2011. This winter storm totally overwhelmed the power system in Texas. So how did it happen? On Sunday, ERCOT, which runs the state's power grid, warned of the upcoming disaster.
We could be in emergency operations as early as tonight.
With millions of Texans struggling to keep warm, several power generators failed, crippling the system. ERCOT operators decided to impose rolling outages to prevent a larger collapse.
If we had waited and not done outages, not reduced demand to reflect what was going on the overall system, we could have drifted towards a blackout.
And while there are unique characteristics to the power grid in Texas, climate experts say the whole country can learn from this disaster.
I think every state, every system should really be taking a close look at how they're planning their systems to make sure that it accounts for climate change.
As bad as it has been for Texas, ERCOT today saying those rolling outages actually saved the system.
We wouldn't be sitting here talking about restoration, today, tomorrow. We would be telling you that we're not sure when restoration would be done.
Not much solace for the Texans who are cold and in the dark yet again tonight. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
As millions suffered through the cold and loss of power, Texas Senator Ted Cruz flew to Cancun, Mexico, prompting a firestorm of criticism tonight. Gabe Gutierrez is in Houston, where the senator just landed.
Tonight, Senator Ted Cruz is back in Houston after his controversial trip, offering this explanation before he boarded his flight from Cancun.
We had no heat and no power, and yesterday my daughters asked if they could take a trip with some friends, and Heidi and I agreed, so I flew down with them last night, dropped them off here, and now I'm headed back to Texas.
But for many Texans, it was a bad look. Spotted heading to a tourist hotspot that topped 80 degrees while his home state grappled with sub-freezing temperatures and an escalating crisis. Senator Cruz boarded the flight to Mexico yesterday. The pictures quickly went viral. Democrats are now calling on him to resign.
This is just beyond anything that you would expect, regardless of party, during a crisis like this.
It all comes after Cruz had previously criticized Austin's Democratic mayor for flying to Cabo on a private jet while telling his constituents to stay home because of COVID.
Stay home.
Earlier this week, Cruz had this warning for Texas.
If you can stay home, don't go out on the roads, don't risk the ice.
Making the optics worse, a source familiar with Cruz's travel arrangements tells NBC News the senator was originally scheduled to return on Saturday, but rebooked his flight early this morning as the controversy erupted.
What's happening in Texas is unacceptable, and a lot of Texans are hurting.
Among them, several we met today who still had no water and were standing in line for propane.
What would you tell Senator Cruz if you could?
To get his butt back over here and help us out.
Ted Cruz has never cared about us, I feel like, so I think it's time for a change.
Late today, Senator Cruz did not answer questions from reporters here at the airport. He went out another exit. Lester?
All right, Gabe, thank you. In just 60 seconds, Dr. Anthony Fauci on reopening schools and when things will get back to normal. Plus, will a third vaccine dose be needed? Let's turn to the COVID crisis now and the key issues of reopening the schools and the vaccine. Chief Washington correspondent Andrea Mitchell spoke today with Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Tonight, Dr. Anthony Fauci weighing in on the heated debate over reopening schools after the White House and the CDC say teachers do not need a vaccine to return to classrooms safely. Is it really safe for teachers to go back to those schools if they've not been vaccinated?
I think to say that you're not going to open up schools until every single one of the teachers get vaccinated, namely making it a sine qua non of opening, I don't think that we can go there. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to get the schools open.
How confident are you about younger children being relatively safe from COVID?
Well, I have never stated that I was confident about that. So we cannot just ignore the fact that children, because they do much better, that they're still not in some danger, meaning you've got to pay attention to the safety of the children at any age.
What about mutations? Dr. Fauci says the current vaccines work well against the UK variant, but they're working on a vaccine for the more resistant South African variant. How close are you to finding a new vaccine to handle the South African variant?
Well, that likely will take several months.
When will life return to normal?
It also depends on what you mean by normal. I still hold that somewhere between the fall and the winter, we're going to wind up seeing it.
What can people do in their lives once they're vaccinated?
If you're vaccinated and you have a member of your family vaccinated, someone that's not lived with you, can I sit down and give them a hug and things like that? And the answer is very likely, of course you can.
But Dr. Fauci says if only a small proportion of the population is vaccinated, it would not be safe to have indoor dining or go to theaters. Lester.
Andrea Mitchell, thank you. With that South African variant causing growing concern, here's an interesting question. Will Americans need a third vaccine dose? So far, more than 41 million Americans have received at least one dose. Hospitalizations are still dropping, now at just over 63,000. Miguel Almaguer tonight on the vaccine and the challenges.
An evolving virus and the pandemic's most emerging threat. Tonight, new COVID variants could eventually impact the vaccines Americans desperately need. With 1,300 cases in 42 states, Pfizer says its vaccine may lose potency against the ominous South African strain.
There's been some discussion with the emergence of new variants. There may be the need for a third dose, including with your vaccine at Pfizer.
As of now, we don't see clinical evidence of breakthrough. We're continuing to look for that evidence. We are preparing for the possibility that there might need to be a change in the vaccine later. But we don't yet have evidence that we need to change the vaccines.
But getting any vaccine is more difficult than ever. In cities not buried under snow or a layer of ice, the distribution pipeline has come to a standstill.
Well, I learned that today's appointments were canceled just by coming here. They told me I would be contacted. I wasn't.
While it's still unclear when children will have a vaccine, Pfizer is moving forward with clinical trials in pregnant women, now dosing their first participant. But in Brooklyn, waitress Bonnie Jacobson says she was fired when she chose not to get vaccinated because she's hoping to have a child.
I do have my reservations about it. Just like, I need to talk to a doctor and just see how I feel.
With some grocery stores vaccinating the eligible, in several states, the frontline workers inside have still not been given access to the same doses their customers have. And in a sobering sign of how dangerous and deadly the pandemic is, for the first time since World War II, the life expectancy in the U.S. has fallen by a full year. And for those at highest risk of catching the virus, minority communities, the loss is even greater. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
There is growing fallout for New York Governor Andrew Cuomo tonight over revelations that his office delayed the release of data on COVID deaths among nursing home residents. Ann Thompson has the latest.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo tonight under fire and investigation.
The emperor has no clothes in the state of New York.
The FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office in Brooklyn now looking into how his administration handled nursing home deaths after a top Cuomo aide said it delayed releasing the data, fearing it would be used against us by the Trump administration.
My administration created the void, and that I feel bad about.
Last month, the state attorney general revealed the administration underreported those deaths by some 50%. And families blame the administration for sending more than 9,000 COVID patients from hospitals to nursing homes in the early days of the pandemic.
He needs to be held responsible.
Today, Team Cuomo denying the governor made a bullying phone call to Democratic lawmaker Ron Kim, urging him to lie about the numbers.
These are the direct phone calls from him.
And he threatened you?
He threatened me, and that's how I felt that this was it. Like, if I don't comply, like, I have no future.
Now lawmakers from both sides of the aisle want Cuomo's emergency pandemic powers repealed, action that could come next week. Ann Thompson, NBC News, New York.
And up next for us tonight, the big money drama on Capitol Hill over Gamestop. In Washington today, Democrats unveiling a far-reaching plan backed by President Biden to overhaul immigration, and it seeks to accomplish something past administrations did not. Peter Alexander is at the White House. Peter, what do we know?
Hey, Lester, good evening. President Biden tonight putting down a marker for progressives that he supports sweeping immigration changes, with congressional Democrats rolling out their major proposal today. The centerpiece here, an 8-year path to citizenship for nearly 11 million undocumented immigrants who arrived in the U.S. before January 1st, for dreamers who were brought to this country as children, and farm workers who could show a work history here. They'd have an expedited process to get a green card. The bill also calls for a change in terminology, where the word alien would be replaced with non-citizen in federal law. But it all faces a steep climb in Congress, with many Republicans already ruling it out as a non-starter. Lester?
Peter Alexander at the White House. Thank you. There was a somber announcement today from Bob Dole, the 97-year-old former senator and Republican presidential nominee, revealing he has been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. Dole, who is also a decorated World War II veteran, says he'll begin treatment on Monday. Fireworks today on Capitol Hill as some of the key players in the rise and fall of GameStop face tough questions from lawmakers. With more on that, here's Stephanie Rule.
Tonight, lawmakers are sounding the alarm.
Decisions made by you and this company have harmed your customers.
We just can't live in a world where my constituents could have their shares liquidated without their consent.
Today's hearing sparked by the outrage after a hedge fund bet the stock of a struggling video game retailer would fall so they could buy it back for less. But short selling is risky, especially if the stock skyrockets, and that's exactly what happened. Eagle-eye amateur investors on the anonymous website Reddit spotted that short sell and banded together to drive up the price of GameStop and other similar stocks. Kevin Kelly was one of them. The high school football coach in Little Rock, Arkansas, is one of millions who uses the mobile app Robinhood to trade.
Trading for the little guys, no fees.
But professional investment firms quickly jumped in and cashed out, making hundreds of millions of dollars. The volatility became so extreme, Robinhood stopped some trading, leaving regular people like Kelly locked out and thousands of dollars in the hole.
We're at the 10-yard line about to score a touchdown, and they wouldn't let us. It's like the refs blew the whistle.
Now he and thousands of investors are suing Robinhood.
We don't answer to hedge funds. We serve the millions of small investors who use our platform. Robinhood as an organization will learn from this.
What happened with GameStop is not just about GameStop. You need to have rules where everybody's playing by the same set of rules.
Renewed calls for fairness and perhaps new laws to ensure it. Stephanie Rule, NBC News.
Up next tonight, the landing on Mars that's inspiring America.
Touchdown confirmed.
Finally, some images are out of this world as NASA's Perseverance Mars rover landed safely on the red planet late today to begin a search for signs of ancient life. Here's Tom Costello.
Transmit heartbeat tones indicating everything is nominal.
The tension inside Mission Control as real as if this were a human mission. Watching and waiting as 127 million miles away, Perseverance was in its final fiery descent through the thin Martian atmosphere. Finally, at 3:55 p.m., confirmation.
Touchdown confirmed. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars, ready to begin seeking the signs of past life.
Perseverance had stuck the landing. Then the first shots of the landing zone, Jezero Crater, billions of years ago, a massive lake. Soon, Perseverance will drill into rock and soil, searching for evidence of ancient microbial life.
Did that ancient life adapt as life on Earth has? And is it somewhere underneath the surface, hiding from the radiation, hiding from the stark low pressure of Mars' atmosphere?
The samples likely brought back to Earth in 10 years. Also on board, a 4-pound mini helicopter, the first to take off and land on Mars, and a microphone so humans can hear what Mars sounds like. At the White House, President Biden was watching the landing.
I could not be more proud of the team. I got a phone call from the President of the United States, and his first words were, "Congratulations, man." And I knew it was him.
The planet that's held our imagination for a millennia, slowly revealing its secrets. Tom Costello, NBC News on Planet Earth.
A great achievement and a hopeful sign at a time we could all use it. That's Nightly News for this Thursday. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night. Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.